And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the unnamed floating comic book Sunday chat, or whatever you want to call it this week. And Earl Grey. Earl Grey is Sonic Youth.
Led Zeppelin.
We got Led Zeppelin, and we've got Fuck Art, Let's Make Noise, a.k.a. Sergeant Fury, before he got the eye patch.
Somebody needs a reference. There you
boom.
go. Oh, you boom. There you go.
So as usual, we're here to talk about whatever we want to that we've read this past week. Hello, Monsieur Maurice.
Ooh,
and
I'm already disappearing.
And anyone who doesn't subscribe to these other folks, I have put the links down below. You should subscribe to them so you won't miss future episodes, plus fantastic videos that they make on their own. Earl just had an incredible video on Basil Wolverton, and Terrence, ComicKkrakk, just had a great video on Help, and what was the other one?
Humbug.
Humbug, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And me didn't do nothing because I'm lazy.
Yeah, I haven't put up any videos since last week.
Gore, you would fit into this group here.
Yes.
It's missing.
Jackie O, one of our longtime favorites. So welcome everybody. James Gallegos, newer to me, but very cool guy. So let's see. Sometimes you guys like to talk about TV shows. I'm not versed in what's going on, but
Loki's a piece of shit.
Whoa, hold on. Loki episode 4. Episode 4, did you watch it?
Yes.
Episode 4 was awesome.
Bullshit. It is bullshit. Typical Marvel crappy doodle loose. What they doing to that show? I don't bloody know.
Yeah, I hear that. We really liked episode 4. Episode 3 was a real struggle to get through. Episode 4 picked up. The story kind of opened up a little bit, I thought it was pretty good. Excuse me, there's flies and bugs all over the place now. I thought it was really, we enjoyed it a lot more than episode 3 because we were ready to pack it in after that one. We were going to give it one more shot and see how it went. But it picked up quite a bit for us in that last one. So we'll see with the last 2 episodes.
So what is going wrong or going right? Starting with Rasa, what's going wrong with Loki?
It's a big spoiler, to be honest. If I am just gonna bring that out, it's a bit too much of the spoiler for everybody. It's just typical Marvel way of dealing with, let's say, devs. It's the way they were dealing with story. So number 3 episode, we had this long conversation where they went into this different dimension where they're trying to sort themselves out and escape and deal with this time traveling company they were dealing with. And then on the episode 4, we have some sort of action happening with a lot of predictable movements, to be honest, in my book. And then at the end of it, if you see the extra scenes, of course, like Marvel usually do, you just like, no, dudes, no, that's not good enough. It's Loki, just do it better. Like it feels like out of all those TV shows, Loki has, for me, it's my opinion only. Don't forget one thing. And my camera is going up absolutely bonkers as well. Anyway, out of all these shows with WandaVision and Captain America, to be honest, Loki so far is, for me, if they're not going to pick up in those 2 last episodes, if there is, I'm completely hating it. I decide that. Because it just feels like you have amazing actor, you have an amazing character to work with, and I don't know what is way easy in there, because there's some hints of saying they're introducing some other movements, what is going to be next phase of Marvel. But using him as or his story as that, it's kind of like, you can do so much more with him. There's so much available with Loki, because what he is, what can he do, how he can manipulate people with emotional levels. And that emotional part they were playing in this episode, and particularly it was good, but it wasn't rewarding for me enough, to be honest. So I felt like an extra scene, really, I was like, what? And there's a great actor there, which is from Brian's, isn't it? Isn't it Life of Brian? He's there, or maybe not. Anyway, there's one of the Loki characters appears as well in there. There's another spoiler I just told you, but anyway, it could be so much better. But let's see how we're gonna end it. It's just, like episode 3 episode, there's kind of different emotions I'm going through at the moment. So, but so far it doesn't click for me. I just need that reward and right at the end, and I want to see what they actually were trying to do to this, because if they do what I think they will, it will be amazing. If they don't, it's gonna be like waste of time.
Any other thoughts on that, Terrence?
I mean, the thing with episode 3 was the drama seemed really forced. I was thinking about it, and kind of this arc of how you run a show. You have this dramatic music. There was a couple of moments where the intensity level was ramped up a little bit, only to immediately stop, so they could have these kind of forced human kind of moments. So episode 3 was such a struggle because it was just really uneven, and they were trying to do things. They tried to do this one long shot that just didn't have the impact. It's like they were running to hit their marks to stand and pose as the camera moved around. It just seemed really forced. It didn't seem natural or rehearsed. Maybe I have a feeling, coming from the filmmaking side, I have a feeling they didn't do as many rehearsals, and they just kind of tried to feel it because they ran out of time. So some of the stuff in episode 3 was like that, where it just was this, you're getting amped up for something to happen, and then it's just a complete stop where they decide that they're going to have this conversation because they think, well, we got to have these two connect with each other. And then in episode 4, the fight scene was, I agree with Rasa, the fight scene was really weak, but I felt like the story elements in that one, and again, I don't want to say anything about it because it does spoil quite a bit. I found the story beats really, really good in episode 4. They hit a couple of marks and changed it up a little bit, with characters realizing certain things and how that shifted the dynamic. And I thought that stuff was pretty natural. I thought that played a lot better, because she's right. Like, there's some really good actors in that show, and they're trying their best to kind of utilize them. But episode 3 was just, it was awful. It was so awful. But I felt that episode 4 really redeemed itself because those story elements started getting interesting again, and it kind of created this other layer of maybe what's going on, and forgetting about all the speculation stuff, because there's all sorts of speculation out there that I don't buy any of it. I'm curious to see how it wraps up. And I think part of it for me was, it was one of the most anticipated shows for me, seeing that trailer when it first came out. I thought it would be better than it currently is. Like, I'm enjoying it, but I wouldn't say it's the best Marvel thing. I think WandaVision still has it beat, because that was just such a spectacular show, for the most part. Yeah.
We're talking about Wanda and talking about this show is another thing that the Wanda, they kept the beat very similar to each moment, and the chemistry between Wanda and our Vision, they were really good, and I think they complemented each other's weaknesses and good parts. So that really works for you. Now you have Loki, which you have really strong actor, and then you're introducing another Loki female counterpart, and she's not up to that level of his. So now you have the same character playing with two different genders, but it's just something's there that doesn't just click for me, for example, maybe even for Terrence as well. So in that sense, it's just it seems to be like, there's nothing you're gonna get from them amazing. So yeah, but otherwise, as I say, I really want to see the end, and hopefully we'll be giving enough of the things, rewards at the end.
To be fair, Jared, you could say that to anybody who doesn't like a show or comic. That's always.
But I think it's especially true. I think it's especially true in this one, because he's right. Like, when I saw those trailers, I had stories going on in my head, and it turns out they were very tricky with those trailers. A lot of the stuff that happens in the trailers happens in the very first episode, where I thought it was going to be something spread out over the whole season. So he's partially right about that, specific to this show.
But also, a show can set up expectations and then, at least for certain viewers, fail to deliver. Because my daughter and I watched the first 2.5 episodes and lost interest in the middle of episode 3. So it's not like it wasn't what we wanted ahead of time. It just sort of lost our interest. We plan to come back to it eventually, but I've already heard the spoilers, so I don't care whether you spoil it or not.
The bad guy would be interesting to what the episode 4 has entailed to us, because of what we were thinking or what they were trying to say to us the bad guys were, or let's say good guys. Let's say this way, they were supposed to be good guys, bad guys kind of thing.
People running the TVA.
Yes, exactly. And we find out basically there's a clue revealed to us that, something is more up to in there. And then that's where the speculation comes in fruition. That's where people start like, oh, I know who's the bad guy is. And I don't really have a clue, to be honest, yet. And I'm glad I'm not so, I'm not trying to nitpick and find all the details what actually is going to be, because I like to be surprised rather than being spoiled kind of thing, because all the speculations. So in that sense, that's what I'm saying. I hope really do that he's going to deliver again. But yeah, in my book, in my head, that Loki is not how he's supposed to be. So
is part of the disappointment in how they handled the variant Loki. I mean, spoilers, he was a she, which I thought was a good idea, but I don't know if it was the right choice of an actress there. But obviously there's problems in the whole script that me and my daughter would lose interest. But did you like the actress who played Loki?
For myself, I think she's okay. Only that's the only problem.
Right, which is a problem going up against this really good actor this actor who's really right for playing Loki, the male actor.
I think it's already difficult for them when you have a good actor who can bring up all emotions and facial expressions and all that, and the person next to him it doesn't have a little bit more. You start to get noticed because you haven't a prime example, and then suddenly somebody who calls, even though she says I'm not Loki, she doesn't call herself Loki, but still she has Loki's abilities in sense of whatever it is. Your brain just automatically says, okay, I need to compare and contrast, because at the end of the day it's the same kind of thing, different dimension, still the same character.
Right.
So that's difficult, and it's horrible for the actress, I think, and for anybody who's trying to put two together. You really have to pick up somebody who's can at least make it more intriguing, to be honest, if you compare those two characters.
Yeah, you needed a really good actress, I think, to go up again to play the other Loki.
Yeah.
I guess Jared thought they were all okay. He doesn't get the hate for episode 3. But maybe because he just wasn't as invested in the first place, I guess. I mean, that is a problem if you really invest yourself in a character or a show or a comic book, then the disappointments are much greater.
Yeah. I just really like the character, and I really like Tom Hiddleston as an actor. So it's difficult for me. Like, I wanted more, because knowing what they could do as a character and knowing the background of Loki, it's just so much to explore and so much to place around with. So, yeah.
So, and there's 2 more episodes. So I guess there's still a chance for redemption.
Yeah, it seems so. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard since how many episodes they're gonna do this show, but
yeah, it's only 6. There's only 6, so 2 more episodes.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's confirmed then. Yeah, we'll see.
And Gore makes a very good point. I mean, every comic book movie runs the danger with me of not fulfilling the thing in my head that was created by the comics.
Yeah. That's the shame thing about TV shows and comic books related to things. Like, it's the same thing I have. Like, The Preacher will never live up to or whatever I've read, because The Preacher is just so much higher for me. Whatever the characteristics is, the same kind of similar things, which is just fine. I'm glad that I see something different for sure. Like the same things. I haven't finished Sweet Tooth, but like talking about TV shows again. The Sweet Tooth, I really enjoy what it is. I really like the characters. I have not read the whole story, and I know that it's not even like a comic book, which is great. But it's so sad. On some days, in this day and age, I kind of really feel like I want to have more entertaining. So Loki won for me because of the character. He's funny, he's sad in the same time. So in comparing those two, the Sweet Tooth, I'm struggling to watch because of what they were using it as. Like, it feels really kind of pandemic-like series as well. So, and that doesn't help either to watch, because you like people like the shitheads, and then it's a prime example, and you read that in the news and you see it on TV and you're like, dudes, stop it. So
Like what Scott says here, that he's not sure if he wants to watch Sandman. I feel exactly that way too. Like, and I used to have a rule: either read the book or watch the movie. Don't do both. I think that started after I read the book. After watching The Godfather, I read the book of The Godfather, and it was so awful compared to the movie.
Oh, interesting.
They do a
Sandman
TV
is-
series about the Sandman. That's
Yeah, they're gonna make a TV series. Yeah, on Netflix as well.
That's a
That
crime.
could be really awful, or it could be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But
Talking
It's
about
already-
adaptations.
Yeah, they already people are kicking off already because there's some character who's like
Death is a
sexuality.
black woman or something, and they're upset.
Also,
with
yeah,
that?
something is going on there, and I haven't heard either. But
Which is a ridiculous complaint because all of the endless take different forms all the time.
yeah,
So it's absurd.
exactly.
It's absurd
Well-
to be upset about that.
But that's
But
why
there are people
when
as
you
well.
invested in the comic book, like some of us do, apparently, it's difficult to flashback. But of course, you shouldn't shout about it, kind of thing. But in your head, you start complaining. Why can't they do just the way it is and show us that kind of thing in a way? But
I recommend reading and watching Mother. What is Mother Night? That sounds familiar. Is it a?
yeah, I don't
Is
know.
that a Kurt Vonnegut novel, or I'm not sure what.
Now I want to know.
Maybe he'll tell us.
Research.
Yeah, so I have not decided to watch Sweet Tooth. I'm stuck. Do I watch Sweet Tooth or do I go read Sweet Tooth, which I've been planning to do someday, because I'm worried about doing both.
As I say, I've started reading it, but when I'm watching it, I can sense that there's nothing what I've read I can see. To be honest, there's characters. It seems to be the characters are there. He's doing it. Yeah.
He's doing
So-
both, right?
Yeah.
I've
so he
done it,
already
yeah.
watched
So
it.
later when I talk about it, I'll fill you in because I finished the whole volume
Address those issues.
and I've watched the season.
Stephen Fry as Fiddler's Green is really a good choice, I have to
Oh.
say.
Stephen Fry is genius in that
Yeah.
sense of the level.
Okay, maybe.
And we have
That'd be
confirmation that Mother Night is a Kurt Vonnegut book, which I must have read, a bazillion years ago. I didn't know it had a TV or movie version. I've been rereading some Kurt Vonnegut, so maybe I'll reread that, then watch the
Wow.
movie.
Yeah, I don't do that kind of thing because then I don't
I
sleep.
love that show. Black Mirror is so great.
I haven't seen it.
There's one episode which we talk about the smartphones. Drove me absolutely bonkers next to my like technology, and I was like, oh, that really gives me creeps, and I start thinking about stuff like that, like really instilled message in it. They're kind of clever with that kind of stuff.
Is
The
that
Black
an
Mirror.
anthology series or one with continuing characters?
No,
Anthology.
yeah, anthology. Yeah,
Okay.
as far as I remember.
And it's the kind of stuff like that really appeals to me. Like Rasa was saying before, I really like the kind of thin line between what's going on in the real world versus what's going on in a fictional world. And I'll later on, but just I'll talk about Sweet Tooth later on. But with Black Mirror, that's why I love that series so much. Is there's just this thin veil between what's going on for us in reality and this horrific way they're portraying it in the show. There's some spectacularly funny episodes as well too. One with the Prime Minister Pig in the first season, which is hysterical. But then there's stuff that's just, it's so dark and kind of Twilight Zone-y, but it's just one step outside of what we're living currently. You know what I mean? It's just one step ahead. It feels like a very near future as opposed to something hundreds of years away. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing I think makes that show for me work better because of that thin veil there.
You should actually also highly recommend the person who actually writes the Black Mirror and who's in charge of that Black Mirror. He is like extremely opinionated person, and you should actually just listen to what he actually says, and it gives you a really good way of understanding where the Black Mirror will go, because he's there in full time, like he's actually how he is presents in the Black Mirror, almost the same way as he is in the real life. It's actually quite scary what actually his head is all about. Because when he speaks, you're like, whoa, dude, you have some crazy ideas. And then you see Black Mirror and you're like, oh shit, this is exactly what you're talking about. So it's a great way to understand. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name as always because we are talking.
High Rise, the movie High Rise was fantastic as well too. I don't know the book.
So yeah, that author J.G. Ballard is a favorite author of mine, and I think of Gore's from the '60s, who is an extremely hard-edged surrealist about humanity. I guess I don't know how to describe it. Hi, Sean.
Yeah, Zesty Clam saying about Utopia. My husband swears for Utopia. He said absolutely love that series. It goes to a levels where, and they're using kind of superhero genre to it. It's very comic booky. I've never watched it, but it's absolutely. There's two versions. You can have an American version and you can have English version. The English version has amazing. Maybe because I'm here, English version has amazing cast and they are spectacular. And one of them actually is in Sweet Tooth. You know, the doctor in Sweet Tooth, he's in Utopia, and he's fantastic in Aida. So he's one of the high up actors to watch, to be honest, because he's really good.
That doctor, that guy who plays the doctor, is also in one of my favorite. Chris Morris, one of my favorite British satirists. He did a movie called Four Lions that is just phenomenal, and he plays one of the characters in Four Lions, who continually wants to strap a bomb to crows, and that's going to be his kind of terrorist act. And of course, it goes horribly wrong. It's an amazingly sad and hilarious. The last 15 minutes of that movie are just incredibly sad, and the rest of the movie was just so funny, so ridiculous and absurd. Chris Morris is one of those kind of genius writers for me when it comes to satire. He's really he's tapped into something special.
Yeah.
Well, comics in America have sold at new heights. Apparently, $1.4 billion worth of comics sold in the United States.
Huh?
I don't know if that includes Canada. Probably it does, but I don't know for sure. But so comics are healthy
and
too.
Sorry, what's that time period for those sales?
I think 2020, maybe, or yeah, I'm assuming 2020. Some figures just came out. I listened to the Publishers Weekly comic book broadcast, and they were talking about that. But I didn't actually catch the time frame, but I assume it's 2020. So that the people who collate the sales figures have finally come out with their charts and figures about it.
And how much of a spike is that comparative to previous years? Is that a very dramatic spike, or just sort of a little more of an upward kick?
I think it's in the middle, like maybe 8 or 10% increase. Yeah, so it's just a very healthy, steady uptick.
I see.
He said, and he bets most of those were not in the direct market, and the biggest growth, there is growth in the direct market, and actually huge growth in back issue sales, but that which were not counted in those figures.
Of course.
But the biggest growth is in the graphic novels and manga markets.
Wow.
But people worry all the time comics are going to disappear. There doesn't look like that's going to happen. And of course, that's just the US or North American sales figures. So I imagine they're good in other parts of the world too. So, Rasa, do you have some comic you can share with us?
Okay, I'm gonna go with the kicker first. I'm gonna go Bunny Mask. So I took this as a guess because it's a bunny mask, and somehow I become intrigued. Kind of like, of course, it does kind of weird feeling of that bloody face and those teeth. And honestly, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this. I thoroughly, from the beginning till the end. At the beginning, I was like really hesitant because the first issues, it always hesitates me. So it's Paul Tobin, Andrea Muti, and Taylor Esposito creative team of this first issue, of this series, I guess, gonna come out. So, and it starts with a past, and this first comic book where when it's the past and present is involved, it actually gives you a perfect intrigue part where I didn't expect this to happen. So we have this little girl being extremely happy, and then suddenly you see her daddy is chipping her teeth away, and she's in the absolute agony and pain. And we find out slowly and surely what's happening with dad and the situation in the family. And he's starting to hear voices of this person or something, what he believes it is there. And this child services comes to visit because the girl doesn't go to school. They knock on the door. Daddy opens up, and then the first thing he does, he stabs somebody with like a, I don't know, the wood stick, something like that, and kills the person. And then the person next to him, he basically punches him and throws everything, like the person who he was next to, who's dead. They took him in the car, threw him through, and this person who was punched wakes up, and suddenly he's in the cave. And that's when the story really hits. And it's actually really nicely hit, a couple of pages, to be honest. It gives you a nice intrigue. It doesn't wait to be too long to actually get into action, which I really like for the first issue. You know, like lots of people are trying to explain too much in the first issue, and here in this one there's some explanation, but it hits the storyline, and there's the intrigue continues throughout. But what really kept me going in this cave, and this guy who was punched, and he wakes up and he's been told to dig, and he's been digging and he's been digging and he's been digging, like it shows day 3, day 4, day 5, then he's day 7, day 17. The day 17 comes in, he sees this little light, he opens up, there's more cave to it. He sees this signs in here, which is like kind of old scribblings and stuff. And then just because he does that, the dad shoots him in his leg, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing? You asked me to dig. I dig it up, and you shoot me in the leg." And then there's this creature comes in, that's where you see your bunny mask, and it's absolutely fantastic because right at the end, which I don't know if I should spoil, but it's kind of the right end. It goes to the future part of the storyline, where they go into go back into the house. These coppers, one of them drops in, finds the cave, because nobody believed the guy, because the guy was found afterwards. They thought he saved them. There's a twist to the story, was that in the future the guy goes back to this art gallery and sees the girl, and he thinks that girl was or the daughter of that crazy man, but there's something else as a twist, and it's really good for the first issue. Spectacular. Really well written, and I was really surprised. And it has this creepy letter at the end, which is of course helps the story quite nicely if you do tend to read it all. And it's this like convoluted girl's point of view, because she doesn't understand what's happening with her. And honestly, really surprised. Really like it. I want to see what's going to happen with the story once again, like in the second issue, how they're going to tell this. Because I'm not going to spoil it to you. It's really nice the way it goes with the story, the way it's written. So yeah, Aftershock, I paid an extra like whatever they charge, extra pound, whatever, to the story, because they tend to charge you extra for this. So yeah, but honestly, very surprised and very happy. I read the first time, just the minute I got it, I read it, and I was like, oh, okay, this is good. This is actually really good. It's like I'm lucky. Oh, good for me. So I picked the right one. So
that artist on there is Andrea Muti.
Yeah, Andrea Muti,
who I've just discovered, because he also drew Parasomnia or something like that this week, and that art and that was incredible. And so now I'm like, maybe I want to get every comic drawn by this guy.
Was it you that Robbie talked about it in his weekly?
Robbie. Yeah.
How it's in his weekly overview. And he said something along the lines of, it was so confusing that he couldn't get anything out of it.
Parasomnia.
Parasomnia.
I can see that.
Beautiful art, but where's the story? And I looked it up because I was very intrigued about the art, to put it maybe on my my pull list. But after that harsh judgment, I'm I'm very on the opposite of his opinion, of Robbie's.
Yeah.
He likes stuff from Walt, which I can't really care for, but sometimes he's on the point. So yeah. was a fair warning, I guess.
I would say Parasomnia is on the edge for me. Like the next issue will make me say whether or not it all made sense, because it was done with kind of confidence and panache that made me think they knew what they were doing, even though you were, as in the first issue, you as a reader were left saying, well, how do these things connect exactly? Because you had two time frames going at the same time, and you went back and forth between them without much explanation or any explanation.
Somehow it's a nightmare, and he tries to solve things in this nightmare and is already in a dream or something.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I can't even find my copy. I don't know where it was, but she was talking about Bunny Mask. So did you like the art in Bunny Mask? Is it?
For me, yeah, I actually, at the beginning, I wasn't really I wasn't like amazed by it, but it was completely consistent. But then everything else, like at the beginning, you judge the story, you judge the art, and then you're gonna just go with the flow. You flip the pages. But honestly, overall, the creepiness part of it and the color scheme, I start to like it even more because of the twist side of it, the way, like not always you have a past and future start in the storyline work. They tell you lots of things in the past sometimes, and they just barely able to touch off the future, what's actually really gonna happen in the storyline. But the twist with this Bunny Mask is intriguing enough because they don't reveal a lot. They show you the chipping, they show you this creature, you show you this, and you presume who the creature is. But honestly, I'm sold. So I was surprised how I am, because Paul Tobin, I'm not really sure about what I've read. He done quite like Aliens. He done Prometheus story. He done Plants and Zombie storyline, which I've never touched.
He's done kids things. He's done hardcore horror. He does that thing Bandette
which is award-winning Bandette, which I've never touched either. Then there's another one. He's doing Earthboy. For all ages, so kind of interesting to see this kind of stuff it's a bit freaky in a sense, but it had a creepiness vibe to it, and that was happening. Why he's doing this is kind of, because there's lots of touching of the past. There's something happened before. This has not only happened to this family, it seems to be, or he has vendetta. Yeah.
I have just this. Sorry if I interrupted.
No. It's perfect. No.
It's.
Nice
I have just the first volume because this was. I got this for half price or so, and it was nice. Has this nice Darwin Cookish retro style going on. Yeah. Not really as good as Darwin Cook, but. Yeah, right. Nice little story about this girl who plays some kind of vigilante Robin Hood kind of pseudo villain, but just too.
It's kind of fluff, isn't it? I think I read it a long time ago.
Yeah. Fluff is maybe.
Sean says it's bliss. I liked it, but I remember I don't remember very much about it because it was just kind of fluffy.
Yeah, I was on the fence if I should continue with it, but I didn't. So.
And his wife, Colleen Coover, is the artist on that. So there's a good interview with him on a podcast called Creator Talks that just came out like this past week. Where he says that writing comedy and writing horror are very much the same form, that they have the same rhythms or reveals and beats to them.
Interesting. But yeah, I know, as I say, I've not this, like it was, I pointed at that direction. I was like picking up just because intrigued by the Bunny Mask, and it's kind of intriguing enough to see. Let's just hope the second issue will be as intriguing as it is the first one. It's always very difficult. If I like the first one, I don't really get into the second one. So we'll see. But so far for Aftershock, it's kind of like, okay, good surprise. Even though, paying extra money for the first issue really like, I don't want to do this. Why are you making me do this? It's less easy for me to try for something new titles, especially. So.
If anyone out there has not ever tried out For the Love of Comics, that is the channel to go check out if you like the kind of stuff all of us talk about.
Definitely.
He even made a video about moving all his books this past week, I think. But great channel. Zesty Clam made a good point about how the current comic book market maybe has greater diversity but lower sales per title. And that may well be true in the US market, at least. I don't know about. Let's see. Sean, whoops, I meant to get Sean. Sean says Vendetta is just fun. Sometimes it hits the right spot. And I can see why Sean likes a good, fun female character too, I believe. Shouldn't you be too? Oh, Zesty's talking to For the Love of Comics. Maybe he's watching us while stacking books. You never know. Yeah, that's why I don't buy many Aftershock books, because of those $5 first issues. But now, hearing such good things about Bunny Mask, I might check it out anyway, if there's still copies left on the racks.
Well, that's the thing. It's difficult to get hold of. It's the same with the Wall comics. There's a comic book you probably picked up, and then I'm not sure if you're going to talk about it. It's called Barbaric from Wall Comics.
I did pick it up. I didn't plan to talk about it, but yeah.
Yeah. I tried to ask for my comic book guy to get me a copy. So like I got only a couple of issues. Nobody was interested. Now everybody's asking me. It's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And it's gone to second print already. So it's really difficult to get into.
Yeah, you need to pre-order those Vault comics because they're becoming kind of hot.
Yep, very hot.
I mean, unfortunately, they don't print enough that you don't have to worry about that. I'm glad they're becoming hot.
Yeah.
So going around the clock, Earl, do you want to show us next something?
I finished this a while ago, to be honest with you, but I just have some questions still, so I wanted, maybe we can clear this up altogether. This is volume 3, and it's the last year of the apocalypse, and everything went south. Apocalypse. No wonder. But it's, shown through these personifications of famine and war and death and so on, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, like I said some weeks ago. And so, yeah, I really loved the first 2 volumes. The third volume is all right, in my humble opinion, and it sticks the landing. Jonathan Hickman, who wrote this here with art from Nick Dragota, looks still very nice, but somehow I had a bit more hopes for the end, because I come to this later, but yeah, now to my questions. First one, East or West, the title, what's with that? I mean, I have slight hints because of this guy, the wolf guy, who came from the East and goes to the West, and there are some quotes, but is there more to it, or is this everything?
Isn't it a nation from the East and a nation from the West comes together and clashing together of that whatever's happening, because of there's plenty of powers in America, let's say, in that time, and there's some of them from the East and from my basic understanding. Maybe Hickman has something hidden message there, but my understanding was that there's too great of parts of the country just clash together, and it's from East and West. But maybe it's just me. Yeah.
Then the second question that follows is, why is the apocalypse all about the US of A? And I mean, it's all right, already a very complex story for itself, and it would be almost impossible to include Asia and Europe and whatnot into the mix here. But somehow I read along, and the question popped up in my head: where is what's with all the rest of them, and why are the four horsemen? And especially since America has the tendency, the slight tendency, to send their four horsemen of the apocalypse to the Far East or to other countries and do their stuff there, and a bit.
For me, is the take of, and the way I had an understanding maybe in my books is that his way of like his twist on Civil War in America. It felt more like that than anything else to me, because of it's just completely concentrated on Northern America, and he didn't even mention anything about outer world in the storyline. So, so I think it's just the way what Civil War would have happened in the future in America, maybe because of the great misunderstanding and all the problems
of course.
that political problems can come up in the great nation of America.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I felt if you don't know where I what I really wanted to say with this. It's not really even nitpicking or so. But then again, with the personifications, I had some problems. There are some nice moments, like here when War goes in a very melodramatic way to death, and says something along. I always did love to watch you work. Death killed some people before. He does what Death does, and so this really fits these characters that War loves the way Death works. Hickman is good at writing stuff that appears to have meaning, but I don't think. Yeah, that's a bit my my thinking. That I've always thought that there are these complex hidden meanings within the story, and the end was surprisingly simple. I mean, the message in the end, spoilers, but love conquers all. And hey, you give me such a complex story, and then in the end, it's Big Daddy Death caressing his son. It's really heartwarming, and I'm a happy end kind of guy. I really love my happy ends, but this end was really a bit simple, for especially when you have these personifications, and you have Sandman, for an example, where these characters really live up to their meaning, and here. And they kill each other. And what's the meaning behind that? That Death is killed, and like a normal guy or dude, and there, and he will be he will be resurrected, like we see in the beginning, of course.
As far as I understood while I was reading the story, all the Apocalypse guys who were part in the storyline, especially not the Death part. Death part was a guy who just decided, okay, I'm leaving and I'll do my own shit, and you guys are behind. And how the four Apocalypses can work if Death is leaving them behind. And the story, it seems to be Hickman have them reborn into a new, like, childlike creatures in order to be part of that moment, in that sense, in order to somehow find the Death and put them together, like into a place where he's supposed to have been. But of course, he had more greater story to tell about his journey as Death and what he wanted to do in that sense. So I think I'm not sure exactly. I'm not in the head of Hickman. My take is that by having them reborn, it's kind of a different, because they didn't have yet those powers they were supposed to have. You know, like one of them, he's like, they almost like a child, but they grew into the story. Like they were, you see them getting in the tribe kind of thing and stuff like that. So
I don't share Gore Vidal's opinion that this was a Lemire way of doing the end, because maybe this heartwarming part, okay, but I think Lemire does.
Well, does he mean Lemire flubs endings of a lot of his books?
Seems so.
Because that's kind of my experience of Lemire. Not maybe 50% of the Lemire books I read.
But not the self-written ones.
Self-drawn, you mean?
Self-drawn, yeah.
Well, did you read Trillium?
Okay. Yeah, there you have a point.
You got it.
Trillium was the expectation. But do you know a second self-drawn one by Jeff Lemire?
I've read another short one, but I have not read.
Yeah, the old one, the dogs, Devil Dogs or something. I don't know. That wasn't so great.
Oh, some of Jeff Lemire's have landed the ending very nicely, but he writes so much, and I've read so many of his comics that I always say, is this going to be one that's going to end well or not? Because, but I also think in general, like it used to be a long comic book arc was one volume. Now they have these multi-volume, each paperback volume is really just a chapter in a huge novel. And I think a lot of people do not land their endings well on those. But I have not, I have bought all the East of West hardcovers and have been waiting to read it. And now I'm going to put it off a little longer.
I think as a tale is fantastic is what your mind perceives. It's what Hickman does to you. I mean, sometimes, yes, the landing doesn't stick. Like J.R. Osborne was talking about his Avengers. Avengers story didn't stick to me at all. But when I read Hickman's Fantastic Four, it sticks to everything. So it depends where you kind of see yourself and in the characters, what he's writing. But I think the major East or West storyline is this major thing happening in Northern America, and suddenly he's ending with a love, because overcomplication in our minds and what we perceive what it is true meaning of the word is, maybe he was just saying and it was sticking to you, no matter how complicated, how everything feelings can be, how war can happen between nations and whatever people they want to be. The only thing solution is love. As simple as that. It can be this. Why overcomplicate it as well? Sometimes you can take whatever you want from the writer. So
does it ruin the journey for you, Earl, or do you
No.
I'm still glad you read it.
These were just questions that I had, and but I had always the feeling, and I said it, I guess, in my video, that I have high hopes for a rereading. But when you finish it and think about it, actually, maybe the rereading won't be so much better, because there is not so much hidden meaning as I thought about it. There's stuff that you have to discover, like why is actually war hating death so much? And this is again a simple love story, and nice in when you find it out, but it's pretty simple and basic. And so yeah. No, I think it's highly recommended, the whole series, but
maybe you've helped to lower our expectations. Those who come after you will enjoy it better without hoping.
I just do what I can here. But in comparison to Manhattan Projects, totally different comic, but the comparison, I made it several times, and here again, for the last time, Manhattan Projects is the more fun comic for me.
I liked Manhattan Projects a lot, and the expectation there is not of deep hidden meaning, right? It's more fun.
No. Exactly.
I think in general, East or West is well worth to check it out. What Hickman was trying, like in the whole journey from that throughout, it's actually quite surprising moves and stuff that he's trying to portray, especially with the hidden message and the other characters, like not main characters kind of thing, the co-stars kind of thing, characters that he was placing in there, and it felt like he wanted to say something more with them, but he didn't really explore that much. He just leave that as a message, and that kind of part of it, if you reread, probably you can maybe sense more to it. So, but I think overall, as his work is really, I read them in single issues, and I was like, I couldn't wait to read more, and I just really enjoyed the journny. Of course, Nick Dragotta's art was something what carried the story even further for me because of that, because the visuals he's portraying and the simplicity in some panels just work so well, because it didn't have to be overcomplicated sometimes, and an artist like Nick Dragotta was able to do that, which is fantastic to look at.
Clearly, yeah.
I've often wondered or thought that, at least in the U.S. comic book system, some of the more successful writers are because they're very good at getting the best artists to work with them.
It helps them a lot.
I noticed that a lot with Scott Snyder. I feel like a lot of the artists who worked with him were actually better than he was, but it kind of elevated his work.
It's funny how artists can actually portray the story, what you say, even can up like elevate, like you say. It's amazing what can some artists can do, because they actually have some of them have even the ability to write as well. So having them next to you and doing the story, it actually really helps as well. So.
And I actually, most of the time, I would disagree with the usual tradition to put the writer first and the artist second, and to speak of this Scott Snyder book or this
Yeah.
Rick Remender book, because
Mm-hmm.
it's you write the story off the cuff, maybe very quickly. I know some of them don't, because when you see the scripts, you see that they had made a lot of work, put a lot of work into it, but the artists, they worked so much longer for the stuff, and so there are, in my mind, they are what propels the books and what makes one comic different and better than the other. So in Europe, usually it's the other way around. You have the first mention goes to the artist and the second to the writer, and I think this is what it should be, actually.
I agree. But I think in the US system, post 90s, what's developed is the writer is the label. The writer is the brand. And so the writers that can manage their brand well by getting really good artists and also promoting themselves well in public, they're the successful ones. They also can't be terrible writers, but they aren't necessarily as good as they seem if they get the really good artists. And many of the greatest comics are done by writer artists, but that doesn't mean every artist can write, because I've seen some bad examples of artists who thought they could write. Well, we can thank Stan. Of course, before Stan Lee in a US comics, there were no credits at all.
So there you go.
So before Stan Lee, no one knew who the artists were. At least Stan Lee gave the artist credit, but he also gave the writers credit.
And we talked about Basil Wolverton before, and Stan Lee was one of the very few ones who actually understood the wonder that was Basil Wolverton, and he encouraged him and tried to support him and so on. And no matter what you think of Stan Lee, that makes him really great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I think of Stan Lee as a great editor, an okay writer, but a smart editor who got the best work from people, and maybe a great self-promoter. So, and certainly self-promotion, that's become the writer's thing.
Yeah, a phenomenal hype man.
Very much so.
Sorry, you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Earl. Was there more on
No,
that?
I just want to say that ComicKkrak's.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying
sentence was
that
muted.
Stan Lee may be a phenomenal hype man. Like, he was able to really kind of pump everybody up about the stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. And he created a sense of community. I mean, it seems silly now, but it was really important to me when I was a kid and found Marvel Comics. So, Scott makes a good point. They, in EC Comics, had writer. Did they have writer credits or just artist credits? I thought they just had artist credits, actually. But I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at my reprints. But for the most part, it was starting with those early Marvel comics where Stan Lee started crediting writers and writers and artists and letterers and inkers and all of that. So, Terrence, I'm curious to see what you will pull off your stack first.
I feel like we should just get into this first, since we're sort of in that vein of Jekyll and Mirror and things like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you can hear me okay.
That sounds fine.
So I kind of binged through the last half of this. So it's Rasa. Before we went on, Rasa was talking about a collection, that Lock and Key. This is 916 pages. So it's an absolute beast.
Wow.
And I was about halfway through, and we went away for the day to this place, St. Malo, which is kind of south of the city. There's a beach and picnic tables, and we had spent the day there. So I sat and powered through the rest of it. I really, really enjoyed this read. I think it's a really good book. The one thing that was kind of through my head was what Rasa had said last time, the kind of similarities to A Walking Dead, I think, were really apparent to me in the book, more so than in the show, the first season of the show. It was definitely there in the first season of the show, but I thought it was more so in this. And one of the good things about watching that show first and then reading the book I really, really like in the show what they did with characters like the Doctor. I thought the way that they followed his arc in the show was really, really, really great. They handle the Doctor character very well in this story as well too. He goes through quite the arc, but I just think that the way that they approached the Doctor character in the show was better handled. So it was really interesting to see the kind of differences, because there's a lot of stuff tone and kind of story wise that are handled really great in the show. But man, there's a lot more that goes on in here. This is kind of his buddy that he meets in. If you've seen the show, he meets them on the train. They used to play. I think in the show he's a football player. In the comic, he's a hockey player. So they used to play hockey together and fight and things. I think the way they handled that character in the book was way superior than how they did in the show. It felt really forced in the show. But overall, I loved this story quite a bit. Talking about endings, there was this one epic through line that basically comes down to a face-to-face battle with kind of the bad guys, quote unquote, the bad guys. That comes to an end. Oh, something with my audio going on weird here. Sorry, can you hear me okay still?
Yeah.
It's good again.
Okay, good. I don't know what happened there.
I guess,
they kind of come to a head where they finish that storyline, and then the last chapter sort of goes into the future, and them just kind of looking back at how they got to this new kind of civilization. I mean, in the story and in the movie, basically, this is a very basic, not a spoiler whatsoever, but just the very basic plot is that these hybrids are kind of the new evolution of the species, and humans are eventually going to die out. So there's a lot of kind of last dying breath for the humans they're just trying desperately to hold on to something. And I think they play that really, really nicely in here. I really enjoyed it. I can't imagine reading this as it was coming out. It flows so well in kind of one big compendium like this. There was some issues in here that I can just imagine picking it up where it might have felt like you haven't gotten anything from a story in one or two issues just because of the pacing. So I'm wondering if any of you have read it when it came out, what that must have been like, because in this compendium, I think it works beautifully. And it really makes me interested to see where they go with the show. It had my interest. The art is great. They have Matt Kint doing a couple of issues as well. And let me just reference the names here to make sure that I get them right. Nate Powell and Emmy Lennox also did some additional art. The Nate Powell issue I thought was great. And I can't say I recognize his name. Here we go. It has almost a Sam Keith kind of look to it, but really, really nice. Just the one issue he does. Matt Kint does, I think, 2 or 3 issues, especially some of the flashback. The one thing that drove me a little crazy, I will say, with the compendium, there's a few issues that are kind of panorama, and it was extremely difficult to read in this big hefty book. But they kind of go back to the beginning of how this kind of plague hit and where the hybrids came from. I thought that was handled really nicely. There was a little bit of odd stuff going on. It's always strange for me when they feel they have to tie it into indigenous cultures and kind of this idea of these kind of settlers coming and kind of taking over this area and the battle between there. I thought it wasn't horrible, but it didn't really, I don't know. There was something about it that didn't quite land for me 100%. I thought it was a satisfactory explanation. It's this sort of, there's this big thread of merging science and religion throughout this whole book. Even the doctor's arc specifically goes through this real hardcore science to kind of religion and things. And the way that they handle Sweet Tooth's father in the book is very, very different than what it is in the show. In the book, he's basically writing a Bible, and he's having these visions of what's going to happen for the future. And that thread kind of picks up later on in the book, where you get some notes as they're reading from his kind of mad writings that are, you can see them actually happening in the real world, which is what starts converting that doctor away from science more towards like the spiritual kind of awakening or whatever. It was interesting, really, really good. It was really great though to see how they can handle that same story for two different mediums, and in my opinion, I think handle it really well. I really do feel that the show handles the incredibly well. Even though it changes quite a few things, I don't think it changes them for the worst for the most part. I think it changes it for the better in just how to frame a story and how to move a story forward. There's some characters in the show that don't appear at all in the and vice versa. So it's also nice as well. So you feel like you're getting two kind of complete stories, even though it's the same subject. So I'm very curious to see where it goes from there.
Hi.
So did they stick the landing?
I think so. I mean, I can see what you guys were saying about the idea of going to the end of a story and then it's just, here's your happy ending, because it was a very touching, emotional ending to the book, for sure it was. And we don't want to even go into any spoilers there, but it was a little abrupt, kind of from our main arc to all of a sudden this stop, and now we're going to jump at least 15 years into the future, and we're going to pick it up there for the last chapter.
Wow.
It was enjoyable. I liked it. I don't know if it was the most incredible ending, but I mean, then I think back on the story itself, and I don't know what else I would have expected, because it set it up very specifically. It wasn't alluding to anything bigger. It was pretty direct with where the story was going to go. Unlike what Earl was just saying about East to West, there wasn't a ton of complexity leading up where you felt let down. You got what you were supposed to get as the story was unfolding. So
actually, I read it in trade paperbacks, in the several trade paperbacks. So there were some breaks between these trades, and somehow I can't remember actually how the story ended really, but somehow it blew me away. I really have a memory of quite an emotional punch and sitting there and crying, and it doesn't happen too often with me actually, and so somehow it hit the right notes for me. Maybe I will.
Right. And I can totally see that. It was touching for sure, the ending. Like, I don't want to disparage the ending whatsoever. Just kind of keeping it in line with what we were talking about earlier. There was just a bit of a jump to kind of get to that ending where I don't know if it would have benefited from another 10 issues. That might have dragged it out a little too long. So it felt, but yeah, there was a definite emotional kick as you kind of see how it unfolds. Yeah, without saying more than that, yeah.
Can you see there being room for the new miniseries he had come out?
I didn't realize that there was a new miniseries coming out, to be honest. So I'll be curious to see.
I guess there's a time break. I've read something. I haven't read the new series, but I saw the premise, and the premise was 100 years later or something like that. So it's a jump into
that would
the
make
future.
sense to me.
So yeah,
I think that would fit. If that's the case, if they're going 100 years in the future, that would fit. Again, it's one of those things, I don't know if it's necessary. I think this has a really good beginning, middle, and end. It's its own piece. You can kind of imagine what's going to happen. I guess, who knows, though? I mean, could be totally wrong. Maybe it's a phenomenal kind of end cap to it.
Oops.
Back in a sec.
To be clear, like to Miss So, it is complete and in an omnibus already. We're just wondering what happens years later. Just recently, he did this short miniseries, maybe because he knew the TV show was coming out, wanted to put out new product.
Unreal, it's fun.
And Sean, you never know. Sweet Tooth could end with a toothless fellow with crying over all those sweets he ate a long time ago.
His relationship with Big Man in the book too is really good, because Big Man doesn't start out. I mean, Big Man in the show, there's sort of undertones of you're not sure what he's going to do, but for the most part in the show, you get a real sense that he's going to do good. In this book, you're really not sure at the beginning of where he stands because of things that he does in the book. He when he takes his turn, it's very dramatic. But even that, it really the relationship between Sweet Tooth and Big Man is not as easygoing for a while there, because of what happens, right? So yeah. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Well, earlier in the chat, people were pointing out my mistake that Stan Lee is not the first person to put credits in comics, because Mad Magazine did it and EC to some extent did it. So I walk that back and say he was the first one, maybe in comics for kids, in color comics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to start with something that I'm pretty sure that Terrence has also read, so you can chime in.
I've ordered it.
Well, good choice in ordering it. I had a great time. I don't think there's anything particularly to spoil here. This is a one-shot comic, much bigger than your average comic book, called Cain and Abel, and it's two artists who are both writing also, Shaky Cain and Krent Abel, both of which sound like pseudonyms. I assume Shaky Cain is a pseudonym, and Shaky Cain was the artist I knew of. Had not heard of Krent Abel before, but so they each have two sort of oversized stories, and Shaky Cain's are both continuations in some senses of his series he'd done before called The Bulletproof Coffin, which I've only read parts of. So there might have been references to things that I didn't catch, but I still thoroughly enjoyed them as kind of surreal yet ironic kind of goofs on other comics in a way, if that makes sense. And just with its own sort of flavor of ironic surrealism that you can't really describe. And then I was super delighted by Krent Abel's also sort of spoofing comics, one called Black Fur, about a insect taking over New York City, and then he's fought off by this bear called Black Fur, who has two baby dolls with chainsaws who work with him. And it was just a lot of fun. And this comic sort of showed me my level of what kind of gross out I can take. Like, I liked the gross out stuff in this comic, whereas I, flipped through Red Room and it was like, no way am I buying this comic. It's too gross. But here I can just take it as sort of grotesque fantasy rather than, I don't know, reminding me of real torture or something like that. So anyway, I loved this comic, and I especially want more of this Abel fellow. Other than that, I guess it turns out this Krent Abel's second story about Nightmare and Sleepy, that these are actual characters from the Golden Age that are out of copyright. So he went ahead and did his own story about them. I'm sure nothing like the stories of the original, because it's they're in some kind of violent, apocalyptic, disease-ridden world where all kinds of gross things happen, but all with a very humorous touch. So I don't know. What did you think, Terrence?
I thought it was pretty fun. I like that. I did like the Abel stuff in there too, especially those pages you're holding up there right now. Love those pages a lot. And for the Shaky Cain stuff, it's good. He does his usual mix of, that first story that he has, that's like a Jack Kirby there. So he's talking about like going to war and coming back and doing these comics and trying to sell stuff. Right. But Jack then the Kirby. Yeah, he does. Yeah. And then the Jack Kirby character turns into Shaky Cain in one of the stories too, where it's him trying to sell his sketches. I thought the second Shaky Cain story was fantastic, going to this artist's house and uncovering in the floorboards and finding these passageways to different parts of the house. And I really enjoyed that story. I kind of wish that one had extended longer. I'd like to read a full length like that.
For lack of a better word, it was more Kafka-esque. And so it had more levels of I don't know, reverberation in one's head. Yeah, actually, with all of these, especially maybe except for the first Shaky Kane story, I wish they were longer. I just wanted, even though it seemed like, wow, 72 pages, we're getting a lot, but in the end, it felt like each one went by really quick. They're both kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Gore hits it with that sadistic. There was these Italian characters. That last story with that skeleton guy. It really is a throwback to some of those characters, which is fantastic. I loved this spread here in the first Shaky Kane. I love these 2 pages a lot. Just that the layout and the blue and everything, really, really nice. Yeah, it was a fun book. I mean, it's Shaky Kane. He's always a little bizarre. But once you kind of are familiar with his world, they even do things like fake letter columns. They have advertisements in here. And pointing out, I love these when all the humans kind of get mushed together in the first Abel story into this big kind of blob of a creature. I thought was ridiculously fun. This tidal wave of flesh as they start to kind of disintegrate. Yeah.
Right. And there's
just ridiculous.
People, even as they're melting into it, occasionally they're saying things. I'm trying to find the page.
Yeah, right here they're talking join us and this sort of thing, and yeah, it's ridiculously fun. I'm glad that my comic guy showed it to me. He sent me a message and said, I think you might want to check this one out. So I went down and grabbed it right away. Yeah,
he
Criminal, exactly. Yeah,
he knows you well.
Yeah, he does, totally.
And these were just kind of showcases of just kind of fun comics that are playing with comics, but are, I don't know, grown-up takes on kids' stuff, and also just, but at the same time, kind of childish in the way you want to make gross-out comics and everything. I just love the mix of all the different elements. So,
and DeCasa is mentioning a Shaky Kane comic, Beef. I don't know that one.
Oh yeah, Beef. I have the
about vegetarian living.
It's very it's very much a vegan propaganda.
Yeah.
Good way of putting. If you want to not eat meat, I guess that's what you should read.
Yeah, it was a little grosser because it was a little closer to reality, I suppose, in a way.
My recommendation for Beef would be just hunt down one comic book, and it was 5 or 4 issues.
4 issues, I think. Yeah,
maybe 4, but it got a bit repetitious and like propaganda, and too much propaganda for the good cause, obviously. But if you want to have more Grant Abel, he's included here. This was edited by Grant Abel. I Feel Love, and the cover is by Grant Abel as well. Oof. And he has one pretty clever story. It's anthology with love stories. And this is the least love story type-ish kind of story here. Black Balloon, but pretty mysterious and fun at the same time. And the story here made me look for this Grant and Abel book that you've shown. And here are Benjamin Mara, which I got this book actually for Benjamin Mara, but Grant Abel's story was even better.
So I think that because I read an interview. Oops, let me get this back. I read an interview with Abel just a few days ago, and I think because he knew he was going to be in a book with Shaky Kane, he really pursued that over-the-top comic book craziness. And I feel like he outdid Shaky Kane, actually. But because it's the stuff that Earl just showed is more toned down compared to
toned down.
Those pages you just showed, not the cover.
Yeah.
Interior pages.
Yeah, I understand, but the cover.
Did he do the cover? Okay.
Yeah. He drew the cover, and it's. I don't know if I really like this cover here.
What-
I like the story.
What have you got there, Terrence?
I also like this their exquisite corpse that they do in this Cain and Abel there. I thought it was
Oh,
just
right, I forgot they did that.
appropriately insane. Yeah, completely just out of control. Love it.
Right. The comic also has joke ads and I think a letters page somewhere. Where did it go?
Yeah, the letter's a total joke too. Yeah, the last letter especially, I think was. Anyway, yeah, it's fun. It was fun. The more that I think about it and we're talking about it, I'm enjoying it more now than I did when I was reading it. I enjoyed it when I read it, but looking back on it, it's well worth the money. It's well worth the whatever it is, $12 or whatever it costs.
Yeah. And this is what Jared Osborne calls highbrow, lowbrow.
Except in this case, I think it's pretty lowbrow. I don't know if there's many highbrow ideas going on in here that they're trying to pass off as lowbrow. This is
it's so lowbrow that it's highbrow. Except
that they're doing it on purpose, right? They're not just doing it because this is the only thing they could think of doing, right? It was more like we're going crazy, having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm losing control of my fingers here. Highlight comments.
Mm-hmm.
For love of comics has to go to bed. That's very understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Yeah, this is something that only works in the comic medium. It wouldn't make sense.
Anyway.
I mean, I guess those what were the movies that those well-known actors did that were not actors, well-known directors that did together the I can't think of them. Oh well, I'll think.
You're talking the Grindhouse movies,
the
Planet
purposefully
Terror and
Grindhouse movies. Yeah, it's a bit in that vein to some degree. Okay, let's swing back around to Rasa.
Okay, so now I'm thinking, what should I speak? I just mentioned, loved it. By the way, Terrence, this is exactly what I wanted to get. What I expected from the comic book, and it's exactly what it is. It's beautifully drawn, like always. It seems to be very much animated series stuff. So yeah, very good. Batman and Deadman is in here, fantastically done. And also we talk about Court of Owls, and I don't think I all fully read the first story, whatever Scott Snyder has been told about Court of Owls. So if they're gonna deliver that for me in this comic book, I definitely in for it. But I wanted to mention this because this is ongoing 46 issues, which I completely going for it. Not single issues, waited for it for a long time. But what I want to point out is, I think, not the story, but I think what Wes Craig is doing to this comic book and how he's telling and how majestically beautiful the panels are and the color scenes. So this is I think 1991, I think, at the beginning of the storyline. Or 97, I think, actually. But he goes through the eras of our Deadly Class characters. And it seems seemingly in here, it seems to be all happy and go lucky. And the past is in this pastel blue color, which I really love. And then we have this amazing, I bet everybody knows what this scene is from. I don't think I have to mention. I mean, it was plastered everywhere, even though you haven't seen it. By the way, I've seen it and I cried my eyes out. That movie, and I'm not ashamed to say that. So yeah, and the story is continuously going to the levels of craziness as it far because of the story our recommender is telling. But I am kept to be amazing, especially in this panel where he puts the past and he goes into the water. And, it's just beautifully designed. And I think he comes out of the water saying, oh, shit, this is so cold water. And they were part of the Oregon area. I guess maybe Damon knows one of those. I don't know. I remember the name of the lake they are on. Tahoe Lake? Lake Tahoe? Do you know that one?
That doesn't ring a bell.
Well, anyway, then it doesn't matter. Anyway, so they're going to memory lane, and it goes into a dark side of the story once again, where it seems Marcus is going back in order to get his future, because he's willing to go past whatever he's been through Deadly Class and continues in the future, but he cannot because the past is continuously coming back at him, and he wants to go deal with it. And in order to do it, he decides to get rid of this cult where one of the members were part, and the way we wanted to deal with the cult is basically put them on fire. And this is what the comic, it goes seemingly nice, and you don't like it, just there's conversations, but then something really bad happens in the story. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But honestly, this comic book would be nowhere near as good, worth mentioning, as not for Wes Craig's abilities to deal with any part of locations. It's just like, it's really nice, and it like really represents kind of the characters really well, and then generally the story just makes you want to come back just because of him, not really of like, I really enjoyed what Rick Remender is doing with his characters, but honestly Wes Craig is helping the story so much more to be what it is. So
seems like a perfect example of what Earl was saying, that the artist should be listed first.
Yes, and I think, to be honest, I really wish Wes Craig would be the first one in here, even though as much as I like Rick Remender as a writer. So, but honestly, every single time I turn the pages and look at it, I was just like, can you do anything? Like, there's you know, like you can nitpick or the character's expressions, you nitpick or something on the wrong side or anything on this. But in here, it's just such a treat from each page you turn, and you kind of really forget what actually the story is going on, because you just, and Luridge as a colorist is really helping here, and it's becoming to explore more colors now, even more what it used to be before. It seems to be and in here, I even recommend that at the back saying that they have this idea of how they want to deal with the storyline, and they all have input. So, which is amazing, to be honest. I really like that, and I think it does not because of a TV show. I don't think many people still talk about it, because it's 46 issues in. There's lots of investment in the story if you want to start from the beginning. But honestly, it's a treat monthly. It's more of a treat monthly just because of Wes Craig and what he's up to, and is bloody fantastic.
How close are we to the end of that?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I don't know if they mentioned. I don't think it's soon to come. I mean, it feels very much like it's gonna come to the fruition, and it's something really drastic will happen to all of them, because it seems to be characters are dying, and they're dying quite infrequent motion. So I'm not sure where the recommender sees the story coming, but I honestly not trying to understand how and when. I'm just getting this in my pull list, looking at it, admire it throughout that time when I get it, and honestly cannot stop thinking about how amazing this artist is. So,
but I feel really strongly about the oversized editions.
I bet.
Just because Wes Craig's art, and I think even money-wise, they are cheaper.
It is.
Than the comic books.
Yeah, it is.
So, and these books are so amazing, and you're so blown away by the art. Yeah.
I honestly, this is the issues. I'm continuing getting the singles, but probably this is the story where I'm gonna go and actually start to hunt out those oversized hardcovers, because the artist itself is just worth every minute of it, because it's just emotions and scenes of action. It's just looks like really well thought out, and it doesn't have like, it has really good neck understanding exactly where the story has to go and how he's going to use those characters. And it seems to be at the beginning, I thought like really cartoony at first, but the emotions he's able to show on a piece of paper is just like, wow, I wish everybody could do this kind of thing. He's a really talented guy, and honestly.
And it's one of the examples where in which an artist shows that he uses a computer and the modern mediums without showcasing it. It feels very classy, very old school, but it's actually everything is done, and the coloring, you can't do it with watercolors or so. It's just not possible, I think. But it feels so natural. So, yeah.
Yeah, as Andrew Lopez has mentioned, I think Rick Remender, he has mental problems himself, and I think it wouldn't be not surprising that he would take the characters to the complete, utter destruction, to be honest, because that's what seems to be that he's revealed Yeah, of course, Corvidal, you want to spoil
I
all
think
my story.
Gore, at the end, it's going to turn out it all ties into Saga, and you have to read all of Saga to understand what it really means.
Yeah, they will be showing all those big ball sacks at each flip of the page, and you will be like, "Oh my goodness sake!"
Yeah, Gore Vidal is the only member and president of the Saga Haters Club.
No, I actually with you. Oh, I'm with Go. I'm not thoroughly into the Saga story anyway. I'm still not convinced. I love the artist. The Fiona Staples is amazing, but all those ball sacks plastered on the page is like really like a slap on my face every single time I flip it.
Ball sack slapping you in the face. A great image we've got now.
Exactly.
I don't even think Saga's ever coming back at this point. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's been 2 years now, isn't it? Or 2.5 now, maybe?
I think it's been 3 or 4. I'm not.
Is it? Wow, time goes by.
They originally said 1 year and they'd come back.
Yeah.
I think there's more Saga haters out there than we think.
Yeah, Gore Vidal, you're not alone there. You can be
But
a
Gore is
president.
by far the most vocal.
Yeah. Oh, he's a secretary of it. Paul Costa. There you go. You have a buddy there as well. I will be your member, like the plaques. Those. Stop the Saga now! Stop the Saga now!
Well, we started a movement right here. Sorry.
Oh.
Earl, other than Saga, do you have something you'd like to talk about?
We traveled by train, me and my wife, and so I had to choose carefully to give me lots of reading material and in a compact way. And no better way and compact reading than Chris Ware.
Wow.
Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth, is, and to be honest with you, this is one of the examples. It's a fantastic book. It's literature in the best way. But I haven't read it before until the end, because there were always pages that were so great that I thought, hey, you really have to cherish it. You're not in the right moment, and what stupid excuses you can come up with. And it's really a dense read and tiny letters.
Oh my God.
This is just the info.
Did you read that part?
No, not even now. But yeah, as I said, we traveled by train and we had a long ride, and I could read it all, and it's an amazing book. But yeah, my wife looked from time to time into my book, and still pretty depressing, and of course, totally right, because. You see at one glance that this is not a fun story, really. And this is actually what keeps me always a bit from Chris Ware stuff. And it's so, I don't know if you can see it. It's one of the instances. I'm usually the one guy who wants bigger books, like we all do. Bigger art, bigger panels, exactly. But in this case here, it's really about putting all this to create some claustrophobic atmosphere. It's this character who just wants to live small, who lives a small life, pretty boring life. He's a 30-something, even though he looks older. Telephones each day with his mom and mama's boy, but he has a rich imagination. So, for instance, he saw one day up there some superhero, Superman, on this building here, and he fell on the earth down there.
My God.
But it's only in his imagination. So his imagination helps. Yeah, it's and it's a bit open if there is this Gus is really a fan of the stuff here, and I'm yeah, you can't help but getting a fan or becoming a fan of Chris Ware. So as well, and what actually happens here is that our guy Jimmy Corrigan is meeting his father, and the father left when he was little, and now he imagines how his father is actually looking, and so he makes up different versions of his probably his father, and then he meets his father, and this is a fantastic sequence. How you draw this awkward situation when a son meets his father, who is actually a poor sap like he. So, and you have this mirror stuff all over the page, and it's not he's not a one joke kind of guy, Chris Ware. He plays with proportions. Like here we have the Superman stuff there, and he imagines himself out of his boring everyday life with this imagination, and somehow it's enough to that he doesn't make suicide or something like this. So, and this guy is just one of the many characters in this book, and this is the reason why I never managed it before to read it to the end, because there are many layers. We have actually 4 generations of these Corrigans, because there's not just the son and the father, but there's the grandfather and the great-grandfather. And actually it goes beyond these generations before into the past. So that thankfully Chris Ware puts some kind of summary on page, let's see, don't know, but we are not just so deep into the book, but already a summary is very needed here. So he does this cartoony summary in this classic detailed fashion that Chris Ware does. So, and yeah, one of my favorite scenes to finish this highbrow writing. Yeah, okay. Looking out to okay.
Earl's seen Europe before.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, traveling by train through Germany is really the way to go, especially when you travel along the Rhine. There are some beautiful routes. So one of my favorite scenes here of many, we have here the grandfather of Jimmy Corrigan as a kid, and he is not treated very well by his father. But there's the situation where the grandmother here, the mother of his dad, died, and now his father tells a stupid story about how his father got a skeleton, he was a doctor, and so on and so on. And it's just a very special situation because he felt recognized, the kid, the child felt recognized by his father. And in all these generations of Corrigans, this is a very special situation because they usually treat their kids very badly, very poorly, and which makes this book pretty hard to read in places. So he felt this precious moment of recognition by his father, and how Chris Ware conveys this, and you have to see this. I just can't read it, and maybe show you see this line here, the light of the lamp that this Corrigan kid switches off, and the light fades away into the darkness. And he writes, it's another night's length of this boy's bedside light is snipped, and it shifts lifelessly out the window, leaving him alone too long. Leaving him alone too long for the evening's facsimile of familiar affection to last for the rest of his life. So, and there it goes. And maybe this was the most precious moment in all his life. And on the opposite page, we have this kind of page just to give you some kind of surrounding atmosphere, however you want. On the back, we have tiny little descriptions of all the pictures that you've seen before. He's
and
manic.
Did you read all that?
Yeah. That part I read because the train ride at that point was pretty boring. It's a hell of a book and very satisfying is the wrong word. It's very impressive. It's and really it's literature. It's intelligent. It doesn't make you happy, not at all. It's not a fun ride in a way. And this is the reason why Chris Ware never will be my favorite comic creator, and this is total injustice on my behalf, but it is what it is. I really like my monsters and my fun and so on, and my heroes and simple stories, because it is actually a bit of a chore, and I'm not riding the train each year or each day for 7 hours. So, but that's the amount of time that you need.
But did you find it very depressing to read it all at once?
No. There's this cartoony way. It didn't emotionally grab me as much as other books did. It challenged me in a way because, to decipher the stuff, I really had to put my reading glasses on. This one here looked like Woody Allen or something, and it is a fight to get all these tiny details, and it's a bit like Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud. He maybe one of his favorite books, I assume, because there are so many ways when you see the passing of time. One page. I look for it afterwards, and I show you it later on. And there's one page that is almost abstract and just fantastic.
I think you should sell magnifying glasses with this comic book, because it seems to be every single book I've seen people show. He has so much detail to show, but the book, or even, I honestly don't know. I always get very intrigued by his panel work, and I always flip through when I go to the comic book boxes, because they books to see, and I always flip through his books, but I never because knowing that he's as depressing as it is, knowing that I had depression twice to the point of no return once, which I, not something everybody would like to be in that place, and that if it can trigger me, because I am very much of a person who can get triggers from a lot of things, so I never wanted to put that myself.
But you read comics with little girls with bunny masks and blood all over the face.
Yeah, tell me I'm weird. Yes, I know that, but that's the thing. But that Chris Ware comic book is never get to me, because it seems to be the one thing of his art style is kind of like he's a special background. It's very realistic, really nicely art forms of doing it. But what I'm saying, it's listening to you talking about it, and it seems to be that it gets into those little panels where somebody sleeps and they're reading those little messages. That's what gets me into it. Just like a storyline where things flashes by me, it's usually okay. But then the person who actually takes into the details, and where he tries to explain a lot of things and gets into person psyche, that's where I tend to like, ooh, dude, I'm blaming my own fire kind of thing, the person me. So
yeah, maybe stay away, really, because Chris Ware puts a lot of himself into it. When you read, Chris Ware is Jimmy Corrigan in many ways. I mean, he doesn't live this boring, miserable life, but he felt about his life, obviously, often in that way, before he met his wife, maybe. And there's some, I don't know. So there's a lot of Chris Ware in Jimmy Corrigan. So it's really well written and very poignant.
Well, before we move to Terrence, I mean, I'm just interested that you were able to read it all in one sitting, because I once had to read it over a weekend because I was writing an article in a newspaper about it back when it first came out. And I was so depressed reading it all at once that, although I don't know if I hadn't been forced to read the whole thing, if I would have gotten through it. So maybe being trapped on the train was a good way to do it.
But I wanted to show my wife, she's not so much into comics like me, which is a very big understatement. And I wanted to convince her, here's a fun page. So I read and looked for a fun page and a page to convince her, this is a comic, look at it. And no, it was impossible, mission impossible.
Are any of his books less depressing? Because I might
that's kind of would like to know, because I mean that scene with the Superman, that was hilarious. I don't know why, but it felt like the way he's seen when he plopped down on the floor, because it reminded me of that comic book we all read in the YouTube channel, you know, that famous Superman story where he's actually saving somebody from the edge of the building, you know, like, and having that twist to that. So kind of interesting to see. But
I don't think of that book as being a drama or a tragedy. I mean, Gore's talking about dramas and tragedies. I feel like it's just an intense exploration of someone's inner life that is a very depressing inner life. And I guess that then the inner life of all his relatives too, which is also depressing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Quimby the Mouse means, but I'm intrigued.
It's his cartoony character that he...
so that would be a little less depressing.
I never read it. Or somewhat.
Well, I'll look for Quimby the Mouse then. I do really like his art. And I've taken out of the library that giant book of his and just looked at the pictures. I didn't even read it because I didn't want to get depressed.
I think Dr. Monkeybot is a big fan of the Chris Ware as well. He is always, every single time he showed me, I was like, I really kind of would like to go into, and then he talks about the story and you're like, oh shit, no, okay, thanks. Kind of my memory just switches off me. But yeah, he has quite great designs on the books, especially there's one of them, like there's a parts you have to put together, like almost like a puzzle. That's intriguing in itself.
And the cover here for the book is actually a fold-out one.
Oh, geez.
So
yeah,
just talking about then stuff you can fold it out to a poster size.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and
yeah, that's
you
clever.
can spend a lot of time just reading the inside of the cover.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of this kind of part. It really intrigues me of him as a creator.
On the other side, of course.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, there's a joy to that kind of creativity, which belies the incredible depressingness of the character.
I guess maybe this is an assumption. Surely it's an assumption, but this is maybe for Chris Ware some kind of lifesaver. His creativity.
Catharsis, or
catharsis, yes. Yeah.
Is Rusty Brown as depressing as it is to Jimmy Corrigan?
I have this standing on my shelf and waiting for another ride on a train.
I see.
I'm afraid.
Okay, so we'll wait for your ride and we'll listen to that kind of thing. So it will be interesting.
Well, so Terrence, what's your antidote? Sorry, for all this depression. The noise requested by chaos.
There you go. So I went to yesterday. So the first Saturday of every month is Red River Bookshop, my favorite place in town. They have the upstairs open, and it's absolute chaos up there. And I love it because every time I go, and I've been going for years, there's always stuff that I pull out of the shelves that I hadn't seen before. One of the things that I found was P. Craig Russell's Night Music Eclipse comics, so one of their early publications. This is from 1979. So they did a bunch of these. They reprinted them in comic form, but they were colored. So the beauty with this one is that it's all black and white. And it's really, really gorgeous. And this is actually a really great page to turn to. There's a lot of, so the basic story is this guy who's kind of gone into space. He's sort of had a man in a submarine type of breakdown when he just can't, he has to get out of the spaceship. He's just feeling really confined and just starts kind of losing grip with reality. So we go into a little bit of his past, and he's talking about the comics that appealed to him, superheroes, Silver Surfer, EC comics. So there's a real EC kind of sci-fi comics vibe to a lot of this art here. And he eventually steals once they've kind of sedated him, and he goes on this almost a little bit of a vision quest to some degree, which is illustrated beautifully here with like the text, and then the imagery that goes along with it. Really, really nice. He comes to and steals a pod, like a shuttle, and that was this page here. Here we go. So here's him kind of stowing away in one of the shuttles and just going to take off and land on whatever planet is closest. And then it just kind of follows him from there as he starts to kind of explore the landscape, knowing that he has a couple of days before the ship kind of comes and starts to track him. He figures he has about 2 or 3 days to fully explore. The other really nice thing about this, besides every single page being absolutely gorgeous, this stuff here is just beautiful. When he finally gets to the end of the story, he gives you 2 endings. I meant to pull out the color versions of these. I just forgot to. I was going to bring them out to kind of do a side-by-side, because I don't remember in the comics when they reprinted these in color if they had the multiple endings as well. So one of them is he basically sabotages the ship has come and gone. They've kind of left him. He sabotages the escape pod and blows it up. In the second ending, he decides to kind of take the pod and go exploring space. So really just an incredible story. And then there's a second story as well too. Some previews of future work. Most of it is silent, if I remember. Maybe this first one had a little bit of dialogue, but the rest is all silent. So you're just getting the passages of the story. Yeah, I mean, not a ton to say about it. I mean, everybody, I think in this chat anyway, pretty much knows P. Craig Russell's work. It's just amazing to see it in black and white. The color stuff is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. But I do like, almost like here's the artist edition of some of this stuff, right? And when you get into that, like, it's just, the guy's phenomenal. It's really just incredible stuff.
Yeah, I have no need to see that in color at this point. It looks so good.
Right. And even stuff like this, just stunning. So there's a little bit of an intro by Steranko where he just kind of sings his praises. And then there's just a one page where it just talks a little bit about P. Craig Russell and just kind of what he's worked on. And, just leaving, he worked with Dan Adkins. And what age was he here? Doesn't say his age. I thought it did. Anyway, he was younger. Anyway, his dad introduced Craig's father looking for an artist to do some advertising work for his business, where was referred to a local Ohio artist who lived nearby. That artist turned out to be a veteran comic book artist, Dan Adkins. And then so P. Craig Russell's dad kind of talked to him about his son. And then he went and worked with Adkins and, eventually just hit all the comic book, spots that we all know and love. So this was a really nice find. There's a couple of things like I'm down to some of the stuff within the Eclipse, my Eclipse collection, that it's harder to find it because it's earlier stuff like this, or it's stuff that there just wasn't a ton of issues printed. So I'm down to kind of, when I find stuff like this, it's really exciting because it's one of those things I figured I'd just never get my hands on or have to buy online. And this cost me a whole $3, which was a nice score. It's beaten to hell, but I don't care. It's all together. There's no pages falling out, but it's definitely been loved, which is great. But it's just gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. It was great. The story was really, really nicely done. But I mean, you're spending most of your time just going through each and every page and looking through each and every panel. I mean, this stuff here is just beautiful. Hell of a guy, man. Hell of an artist. So anyway, that's that one. Night Music.
Cool.
Very cool. I'm definitely going to have to keep an eye open for that. I wonder if I have somewhere one of the color issues, but I'm not sure.
Probably do, because I think when Eclipse did, I think, I don't know if it was like 6 different issues that were all they kind of had the main heading Night Music, but then each one had a different kind of subtitle. I'm pretty sure they were all kind of listed under the Night Music kind of banner, though, because I know Eclipse did quite a few of his comics.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I think Gore's right about that. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, Dan Adkins did some beautiful work on Doctor Strange. I remember a Kazar series drawn by him. And he seemed also then to do a lot of inking, but I think I've read various artists talk about coming through Dan Adkins' studio. So it's interesting that he's less well known than some of the people. Yeah, Zesty Clem saying, I think he's talking about Adkins knocking himself out on Strange.
Yeah.
He was a good artist. Maybe he wasn't fast enough or something. I don't know. You know, back then, people who couldn't produce an issue a month, if not 2 issues a month, had troubles.
Yeah.
Well, I picked up Where Monsters Dwell, and I was secretly hoping it was not reprints, but it is reprints of stuff from 1959, 1960. This would have been like a 1970 copy. But in the end, I really enjoyed it a lot. It starts with this incredibly drawn Steve Ditko story. It has 4 stories in a 20-page comic. And they all have a good ending in terms of a mystery story. So, but this Steve Ditko art was I just thought it was incredible. So much better than stuff he did later, I'm afraid to say. But so it basically is about this guy who has one of those curio shops that always shows up in old horror stories, and he has a statue that a guy is really intrigued by, and the backstory is the statue is actually of a criminal who wanted to rob what was behind his mysterious door. But behind his mysterious door is Medusa. So he gets turned to stone. And it's funny. I mean, it doesn't say who wrote this, so I don't know if Stan Lee wrote it. I imagine Steve Ditko either actually wrote it or did the plot. But it's funny that such a simple story just had a lot of personality to it. Basically, this other guy wants to buy the statue, and then he gets told the story behind the statue, and then he says, no, never mind, I think I'm going to go home. And that's the whole story. But it just has so much flavor to it that I really enjoyed it. And then the next story, I had to look up who the artists were because there's no credits whatsoever.
Of course not. No.
I Met the Thing on Midnight Island was drawn by Don Heck. And this sailor finds a message in a bottle saying, help, I'm on Midnight Island and I'm stranded. So he goes to Midnight Island to help, and he can't find whoever wrote the note, but he finds this monster who he keeps running away from. And at the end, the monster gets rescued by a spaceship, and he realizes the note was from the monster trying to get help because he was stranded on the island. And that, again, is the whole story. But there's something just about you have a sense just from these few pages of what this character, the sailor, is like. And, you know, it's not the most profound twist, but it just sort of was enough for me. And maybe I was just in the right mood for these very simple stories. And then I was trapped in Nightmare Valley, is where one of those cliched great white hunters who's off in, I guess, India hunting around, and he wants to go to exotic places, hears about Nightmare Valley, and everyone tells him, don't go there. So he goes there, of course, and the trees start attacking him. And it turns out the trees are aliens, and they're just waiting to multiply enough for their forests to grow, for enough trees so that they can invade all of Earth. So they sort of go to Earth and then multiply and then take over. But sadly for them, a volcano erupts and lava flows over them all and kills them all. And it's an interesting thing is this, presumably we're in India or maybe some other country in that area. There's this guy with just one leg who rescues the great white hunter, and they just they end by saying, Earth itself destroyed the invaders. But it just has flavor to it, even though it's this basic story. This one was drawn by Paul Reinman, who I think drew the X-Men for a little while. And the final one, Monster in My Cellar, is drawn by Reed Crandall, who I didn't even know he was still drawing comics by the late 50s. I think he's famous for his EC work and his Golden Age work. What was this one about? I remember liking it too, but now I can't remember the plot. I mean, there's a monster in his cellar, but I'm trying to remember what... I think the guy's a writer. And I guess he wrote the monster into existence, he thinks. So he decides he's never going to write another monster story again in his life. And
that's why it's a bit boring.
So anyway, very simple stories, but when done right, for me, these very simple stories actually work. I was surprised how much I enjoyed them. It's hard to tell with these 70s anthology books from Marvel. Occasionally there are ones that have news stories by Jim Steranko or other interesting people, Mike Plug or something. And that's what I was hoping I was getting here, but I still enjoyed it. The cover is a new cover by Marie Severin, who doesn't get much credit, but I thought that was quite a good cover. Let me show that.
Yeah, she's done some great work with Hulk stuff as well. So.
Yeah, and she did a lot of covers and we don't even, they weren't signed or anything, so you have to look up online to find out that she did them.
When you were telling that story with the trees, I was thinking, he's gonna say, "I'm Groot." That would be hilarious.
Yeah, that wasn't Groot, but it was close.
Yeah, that would have been a really good twist to the storyline. So. Anyway.
We probably can just go around one more time.
Okay.
I've got a half hour left, and then I have to go help prepare for a Independence Day barbecue.
Ooh. So I guess it's my turn, yes?
Yes.
Going around.
Yes, your turn, Rasa.
So I'm going to talk another artist and writer in the same book, Terry Moore. But this book, it's kind of like a little bit it's one of the Terry Moores where not everything I pick up, but what really starts off tremendously for me is this first page. This face he's drew, and it's so crazy. And it says it's difficult to spot a psychopath. In fact, they can look actually like they're more genuine than other people. And that's just like, oh my God. So this little beginning, it really works. So Terry Moore usually have the first page like this, tells you like something he likes of the phrase of the book, but this one just works so well because definitely what he is doing in the storyline is actually talking about the psychopath killer. And this, no wonder it's called Serial. Now I finally kind of, in a way, slightly get it because there's this killer. She is a glassblower, but she's like really kind of creepy, and Terry Moore is doing absolutely fantastic in this comic book to make that creepy levels really well. But also what he can do from creepy, it gets to a levels of especially people's like misfortunes, but the facial expressions are absolutely fantastic, in a way a little bit hilarious as well. But yeah, so there's this scene. So this is basically almost like a wordless scene. So there you go. You see her as a glass blower, and she has this trinket. So every single time she kills somebody, she makes it like a souvenir for herself in the glass, where she puts something very like whatever from that person's death inside a glass trinket. And to be more even gruesome to that, her way of showing in the way of affection, she kind of leaves all those trinkets to her mother, but her mother got another end of the storyline, which I'm not going to spoil. But this scenes in a couple of pages he's doing, it just makes it more. So she's basically what he was telling in that sense, like how psychopaths behaves and how they practice all the time to be normal, and he's doing that to this characters here. And the last page he has she's really trying her best, and then puts that face to make it feel like she's like a happy person kind of thing, but in real life she isn't kind of thing. So, and then she's basically preparing for another murder, and that's how she does it. And it's really kind of interesting take for him to do that without actually writing a word. And what Terry Moore does, which is really frustrating for one thing, I really enjoy what he does, and I always will support him in this single format. But honestly, his work is definitely amazing to read in format of hardcover or omnibuses or anything like that, because the story goes so quick in one issue that you're like, oh, and you keep on willing to want more. And the way Zoe in here, she's basically showing in this one how she murders this pervert who basically comes after her, because she basically knows exactly who he is, and he sets up the scenes for his weaknesses, how he comes and finds his victims. So instead of him making somebody else a victim, she makes him a victim, and then blows him and makes him suffering. And that sadistic way of a little girl who is supposed to be a very aged woman in a girl's body doing this, and Terry Moore does it so well. Really good. I mean, as a creator, he's fantastic, and he's really it does do research really well, and those creepy vibes of the characters is portraying in the black and white form really well. So really good, really interesting to look at. And another artist who can do write and draw, and he does is fantastic in black and white. He does, I mean, I don't really imagine in color would be interesting, but they would escape that simplicity of emotions he portrays in faces, which I absolutely love. And that's why I can't stay away from them being in single format, because I want to support his work, because he does tremendous work, and he's all by himself, publishing, drawing, writing, everything. And of course, he has his wife who really helps him. But I think this kind of creators should be definitely. I know hardcovers or trade paperbacks is much more easier format to get into, but I think this way getting it is just really helps him to see how much audience he gets. And he does really have a really good audience who just buys anything he produces, because it's just when you get into his stuff and you find out about his characters, you just want. And he always portrays females, mainly his main characters are females, which is actually quite entertaining to look at and see it in the shelves, not always having a male man in the picture being a hero or whatever he can be and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely fantastic. So
well, yeah, he's a wonderful example of the writer artist as being, the ideal. But I now you've made me feel very guilty, but I just can't get him in single issues.
That's fine. I mean, it's up to all of it.
I've tried a couple times and it just doesn't work.
It's really does. It does. Honestly, every single time I get kind of a little bit frustrated, but I know why I'm doing this, because I just I think he's the only one I'm trying to do this in single format. I'm trying to, there's some certain errors, but I think what he does and how he produces the stuff is what I want to celebrate and support him in single format. I have his like Rage Rising. I double dipped. I have this omnibus in hardcover, which is a fantastic story to flip through. And anybody who hasn't read it yet should read that stuff. It's really good, well told storyline, and of course in black and white. So yeah, so sometimes like a creator like this who is, I don't know, I'm not saying I'm feel like I just, as I say, I want to support him, and it's well worth the time, even no matter which way you're gonna go, singles, trades, hardcovers, whatever it goes for you, whatever you like it. I think it's well worth to explore Terry Moore and he's creative. So stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's good there are people like you, because he probably couldn't afford to keep going if he only had trade sales.
Yeah, he has to work pretty hard in advertising. I mean, he has his own channel. He's always tries to, like advertise himself as much as possible, of course, because this is his goal at the end of the day and his passion to do that. And whatever he produces, he does take his time. It seems to be all the hardcovers, whatever I've seen, the quality is amazing. I've not heard anybody talking about anything bad. That Omnibus Rage Rising one I have in hardcover, it's really good quality as well. It's good to look at on your shelf as well. It does limited edition hardcovers as well, which is what he basically, I think, makes money off. And he says it's not easy to produce hardbacks for people, because people likes to do actually collect hardbacks, but he says it's very expensive adventure. So all this kind of single issue buying formats, that's really helped him to understand where these things are. So
Well, I'm glad you keep us updated and reminded of his books. Did you manage to get all the single issues? Because wasn't there a problem at one point?
Yeah, it's I don't know what's going on with this particular one, but this is the first one I'm really struggling. But yeah, this issue number 2, I had to get second printing, but because Diamond trashed the shit out of the issue 2, the first edition, apparently, especially for my comic book guy. He said he found the box, it was almost mangled, to be honest, to the point of like no even able to rescue them. So he had to give me a second. And now I keep on asking him. I'm a kind of obsessed, and I think he's really tired of me talking about this, because like, he said came out. He's like, you wrote the reply to me. You asked for it like 2 weeks ago. It's like, oh, oops, sorry. I just want to make sure I have it. So yeah.
So we're back around to Earl.
Okay. Black and white as well, but Batman. And actually 2 times Batman, but I try to make it quick. This here is Batman Black and White issue 6, or was issue 6. I think it's the last issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. And just want to talk about some stuff real quick. What a peculiar cover this is here. I mean, you have to take your time until you realize that there's the Batman, and here he is the Batman, and that's just his mirror image in some glasses, and not a picture that you can understand quickly while you go along the shelves. And again, this cracks me up every time. They have always the first time here this double page spread and some Batman destroyed in the gutter loss in between. I don't know who is the editorial here. Last point of nitpicking. Here a picture or drawing by Babs Starr, and it is so. First thing here is, why this has to be in black and white? I mean, this looks for me to be a picture that has to be colored. It's not a great drawing to begin with, but it's blurry. And however, stop with the nitpicking. There are some great examples of different takes on black and white art. Here's
That looks cool.
by Nick Pitara, I believe. No, Nick Darrington, who did the Doom Patrol series.
I love Nick Darrington's work.
Yeah, and it's really a treat for the eye, but the story tries to be psychological and manages in a way Batman playing some kind of chess and trying to rescue Damien, I guess, over here. Too late. And my favorite story, but almost purely art-wise, is this one here, drawn by James Herron. And like Monsters of the Deep. And
did Herron write it too? Or no, Arcudi?
No, John Arcudi. So Hellboy Dream Team assembled together here for Batman. And it's a Clayface story, spoilers. And I don't know if you can really see this here, but it has a lot of black and white patterns, plays around with structures and such, that it's really just nice to look at. I mean, Clayface stories, Clayface stories, there are a lot of them, but this is really, nice one. And the rest of the story, here we have another story as a contrast, which is drawn in this fashion here, stark black and white, and there are some other ways, but actually for the most part, I want to talk about this tome here.
Ooh.
And comic hoarding in the purest form. This is here for me because I don't know how few percentages of the stories here I've actually read, but I still keep getting these books here. This is already volume 9, which arrived at my doorstep. And my method of tricking me into the feeling that I've actually have read something is to split the book here in half and read some random story. I mean, eventually in some years from now on, I will have read all the stories. But this is Batman issue 80. And so just real random pick of mine, but turned out to be, as almost always, a real fun story. Joker, as his own public relation agent, makes movies, and very highbrow, lowbrow movies. Robin and Batman throwing cakes at each other it's all about dissing Batman and Robin, and Joker making his fun out of it. It's a Dick Sprang story. It culminates in the end with him. They catch Batman and Robin, Joker and his movie team, and they smear honey around the lips of Batman so that he can get a kiss scene in his movie. Honestly, a story that has Batman kissing a goat can't be a bad one. And it's actually it's Silver Age nonsense, but Dick Sprang feels to me more like a Silver Age artist, to be honest with you. Yeah, and now they had the problem. They had Batman and Robin in this difficult situation, and only four panels to go to resolve all the stuff. And then Batman can come up with, I have foreseen all of this, and I planned this, and I planned that, and it's back to normal in 4 panels. So that's a bit...
Look at that dialogue squishing the characters down to the bottom of the panel.
Yeah, that's text. Yeah, exactly. And issue 80 included this story here with Batman as well. With Robin. This is a Robin story. Robin all by himself in the flat of a neighbor of Bruce Wayne because of reasons, and then he has to fight some criminals by himself. And the last story in that issue is Machines of Menace, and this is the most Silver Age-y of the three of them. I love how this car here is squeezed under this huge robot insect, whatever that is. And behind all the stuff is, of course, a manic professor, and he has caught some scientist who builds all the stuff for him. What's pretty interesting is that the credits still, of course, go to Bob Kane, and what he maybe did, or yeah, I think so. He drew Batman and Robin, and when you look closely at this particular page panel there, you can see that Batman and Robin are obviously glued onto the rest of the panel. There's a bit of space around them, so maybe Bob Kane did some stick figure like Batman and Robin, and then they put it inside good art. So, and we have, yeah, more of this, these machineries that are threatening Gotham, but of course, Batman and Robin solved the case in the end.
What year did these come out?
Please?
These particular stories, do you know what year?
I guess 54 or something.
Okay, yeah. So the Silver Age
54.
style, at least for Batman, started before the official Silver Age began, I guess. I love that Dick Sprang type of art. I hated it as a kid, but I love it now.
So you were around in 54?
No, but as a kid, I got a lot of reprinted Batman.
Yeah.
My first Batman was the 30s through the 70s Batman hardcover that I guess was sold at a lot of bookstores when I was a kid, and I got one for my birthday. So at the end was Neil Adams, and most of it was Dick Sprang.
As a kid, I haven't read any Batman at all, I guess. Maybe some flea market copy or something, but just a few pages. And if you don't read some stories of Batman, you don't get it. It was very exotic to me. And I remember that I really started Batman probably with Arkham Asylum. Later on in the library, I read it, just a random pick out of the shelves, and was instantly blown away, of course. And
And now you're reading the Golden Age Batman.
Yeah, so I'm working my way backwards.
A very different character, really. So it's now Terrence's turn. Oh, Sean saying Dick Sprang's name confused me as a kid. I suspected he was in a different line of work.
It's one of the greatest in comics. So for my last kind of chat here, I managed to work my way through these 3 issues of Now. So I've got number 1, 2, and number 4. I never went any further with it. And this was the first time I read all 3 of these. And I had pretty much the same feelings I did the first time I read number 1 as I did the second read through. Most of it kind of bored me to tears, to be honest. And it really felt like, hey, we're gonna do these. I don't know, man. Yeah, maybe I won't talk about that. So anyway, for the most part, most of these didn't work for me. I feel like sometimes with this style of comics, the ideas behind it are pretty lofty, and I don't think it always works for me personally. And then I come across Mr. Noah Van Sciver's piece in this one, Wall of Shame, and I thoroughly enjoyed this story. I thought it was a really, really great one. It was the standout. of this issue for sure. So made it through and was really hesitant on reading the rest, but I am glad that I did, because I found issue 2 was kind of in the same boat as issue 1. There was a couple of more stories that appealed to me. In this one, we also get from Future fame, Tommy Masturi. Where's his piece right here, which was what you'd expect from the guy that does the Future comics. There was a couple of other standouts in this one. Susan Joanitas and Graham Chaffee. This one called Sharpshooter, I thought was really, really great as kind of an intro to a longer form kind of mini series or whatever. I don't know where it's gone. I haven't done any research on these artists and creators that I don't know, but I really enjoyed this story. Just this woman who has kind of a deformed arm, who's a sharpshooter and gets kind of picked up by this guy who is the parents almost sell her off to the circus to some degree. Not quite as bad as that sounds, but and she kind of finds someone that she fits in with there, who is this knife thrower who's also physically scarred, literally with scars all over her face, Sophie, and they form this bond. So it's this really nice, I thought it was a really well done little story that really left me wanting to read more. Was another one of the standouts here art wise. This one I thought was pretty fun as well. Page 59, Ariel Lopez, A Perfect Triangle. I thought this one was very clever as well, to this woman who's kind of traveling around her neighborhood and starts to notice that there's these little triangles above a bunch of the doorways. So her and her friends start to investigate. And of course, she lays everything out, all the houses that have triangles, she lays it out on a map, and they go to the epicenter. And, you can probably figure out what goes on from here. They get sucked into this other dimension with these kind of creatures and gods here. So there were some real hits in this one. But number 4, this one probably stood out the most to me. There was the most in here. More of the stories worked for me than didn't, even if that was just in the art alone. And really comical, bizarre stuff like this one, where this guy is coming over and it's his time where his dog licks his eyeball, and he's explaining to his friend how he's weaning him off this habit of wanting to lick his eyeball. Normally there's not anybody around, and just seeing the look on his friend's face, I don't know, it just really, I got a kick out of it. Clearly I still do get a kick out of it. So it's a fun anthology for sure. And I've heard that it kind of gets better as it goes on. I can't remember if it was you, Earl, or if it was Ryan who had mentioned some of the later issues before.
I did a video about it.
You did, yeah, okay. That it just kind of gets better. I just fell off after this. I never looked for it. I didn't keep up with it. And some of the work in this is a really gorgeous looking story about this old woman who lives alone. A lot of kind of Jim Woodring kind of ink lines in this piece, but that was a really great one as well. So I think I'm on board for it. I think I'm going to go for it and just kind of dig in and see if I can find the rest of them. I'm sure they're in a back issue bin at Galaxy Comics. I'll be able to pick up the other ones. I don't know how many there are currently, 9 or 10 possibly.
10.
10? Okay.
10
This was really great as well. This is one of the standouts for me. This guy who has this condition where he sees faces in things, but he starts to lose recognition of people's faces. Everybody starts looking like this character up here, where they have no facial features, but he's seen even in the lines in his own hand. Really, really unique kind of storytelling. Anyway. Oh yeah, this was another kind of standout one. Yeah, looking back on this one, this issue 4 is kind of my favorite of this batch right here. Really, really worked for me in many different ways. One where this character is going to find kind of, gets in touch with God, who takes him to this conference of gods where they just sit and talk for eons about a message that they want to send to humanity. Pretty funny. Yeah. Anyway, so if you don't know it, it's well worth picking up. Seeing if there's anything else that stands out. Oh yeah, this guy whose name I always forget. I want to say it's 16. Brian Blommerth, is that his name? With his style there. I haven't read his
cool.
Bicycle Day, I think it's called. I haven't read it yet, and I really should, because this was pretty enjoyable. His art is pretty incredible. So, yeah.
Well,
Facial
I just got
blindness is
number
an
10 in the mail.
You did.
So I assume it's the most recent issue. I've read number 1 and number 5, and so far I'm liking number 10 a lot more than those. But what is it? All of their covers feature grotesque faces, I guess.
I love the
I'm
covers
not sure
so much.
why.
I think the covers are really great.
Really? I just don't get the point of their covers. Oh, I like that frog
I had
one.
this one up on my rack downstairs, and I love just coming down and seeing this image. Really, really
the one
great
with the
stuff.
pill is cool.
So
And this one's confusing because it says on it, the future is female, and you can't really see the name now up here. So I saw Chaos in Comics thought this was just an anthology called The Future is Female. But the stories I've read in here so far have nothing to do about females. Did you get this one yet, Earl?
No.
It's
on my way. It's on the way to me.
Earl did a good video covering a number of issues
Fantastic
of now.
video, like always.
Yes, fantastic, like always. Brilliant. You may go blind when you watch it. It's so good. But but anyway, this
Lots
is
of
the first issue of
Krautisms,
Now
I'm
that I've
sure.
read that I was really enjoying. So I might go back and get some of the others.
When you want to continue with 5, there's the history of man with hats. This was my favorite, I guess.
Asshole hat.
Yeah, asshole hat, but it's a brief history of man's hats. Fun little story by one Walt Holcomb. Yeah. But of course, there's always a certain percentage of this artsy-fartsy stuff. Not this year, but Theo Ellsworth, which is pretty great.
So who's coming out of these anthologies? Who's printing them out?
Fantagraphics.
Fantagraphics.
I figured
And
as much about
for
that.
for basically a book, you know, an anthology book, it's $13 if you paid the full price.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good deal if you're interested in current art comics or whatever. I don't even know if art comics is the right term. I don't know what to call them.
I think he does a good write-up in issue 1, kind of just his, I think it was Eric Reynolds. Sorry if I've gotten that wrong. But he does, Eric Reynolds. So just talking about why he wanted to do this and just felt like there was a gap in kind of some anthologies, kind of highlighting some up-and-coming kind of alternative or independent creators or whatever, you know. So I think it's a pretty good thing because we don't have kind of that in kind of, I mean, I would consider Fantagraphics more closer to the mainstream than other publishers. So it's an admirable idea, I think.
I don't read the, there's those, again, the title, but America's Best Comics. And those always have the more literary or art comics in them. I don't know if they draw much from now or not, or where they draw from. But I kind of
those are all
imagine
over, and each year a different group,
a different
or
editor,
single
right?
person.
Yeah.
And it's some of them that I picked up in the past. I don't have them anymore. I since passed them on, but they were pretty fun, especially in kind of highlighting some names that have passed me by. But yeah.
If you and Gore, I'm sorry, not Gore, Earl. If you and Earl both got this issue, it might be kind of fun to go over it like story by story and say what opinions.
Good
we
idea.
have. And or if you can,
that'd be
get a
great.
hold of
I'll look
it,
for
too.
Absolutely.
But it's very interesting. I'm out of time, but I'm glad I picked it up, and maybe I'll look for some of the earlier issues now. Some of them. Yeah, sometimes I just don't get, like, why does this even exist? Like, what was the artist's reason for doing this story? But I didn't feel that with this issue.
And why are they feeling the need to push it on to us? is how I felt in the first issue with some of the stories. It's like, what are you trying to tell me here, and why should I even give a shit? You know, so
yeah. It's a subtle thing, though, how you make someone care about a story and how you don't. I don't know why. I don't know how that really works, but it's definitely a thing that you either care or you don't. So thanks to everyone who joined us and left us great comments. And really appreciate them all. Some I couldn't put up either because I was talking and not paying attention, or because they were too far away from what people were talking about at the moment. But lots of great comments. We have a great audience. And so we will be back next time on whose channel? Earl's? Yeah, we'll be back on Earl's channel if Earl has the free time this next Sunday.
Great.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.